It's Mental Podcast, the podcast to smash the shame of mental illness by talking about it openly. I hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, this is It's Mental Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Kate Cheka.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Do you want to introduce you a bit?
Sure. I'm Kate. I do comedy in Berlin. That's how we know each other.
Yeah.
God, what else do I do? I have a podcast, Love in the Time of Corona. Sometimes I write some stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm up to.
Cool. So, this podcast is about comedy and mental illness. Could you please describe to us what's your relationship with mental illnesses?
I have been mental since. I have always had things I've always struggled with my mental health since I was quite young, since I was about 10. And I would say it would be classed as depression. My mother really didn't like to call it depression. She likes to call it melancholia. She kind of leans away from the whole antidepressants, trying to medicate it. I had some therapy as a child and stuff. The older I get, the more I am reluctant to kind of go with a medical, biological idea of mental illness. I mean, I'm sure this is for some people, but my depression's always been in response to circumstances where I'm actually, this wasn't a good place for me to be. So I wasn't enjoying school, and that made me depressed, and so on. Yeah.
So you think were you diagnosed with depression ever?
Yes. So I went to the doctors a couple of times in my life. I've been to the doctors and been prescribed antidepressants and then never taken them. Which I don't know. If it works for you, works for you. But antidepressants are quite funny because you have 6 weeks where you can be quite suicidal.
Yeah.
Before you they start feeling the effects. And then the people I knew on antidepressants, I had family members and friends, they were quite numb. So some of the side effects are not being able to orgasm, and then also not really experiencing any highs.
Yes.
And that's the thing with me is I have these in kind of very, oh my God, I love this so much. I have these very big life highs where I'm oh my God, I'm loving life. I'm so happy. And I didn't want to not be able to have that as well. And part of, I think, the deal of having big highs is then to have very strong lows.
Yeah. So when you were 10 years old, how did you or how did your family knew there's something wrong?
Well, I just was, I was refusing to go to school. And then I was trying to sort of self-harm in a kind of, I had a bit of a self-harm thing. It's interesting because I don't know whether I ever grew out of self-harm phase or I just found more socially acceptable ways of self-harm. Because it's one thing if you're going to cut yourself, but then it's, I feel trigger warning that if anyone suffers with self-harm, but then it's quite another if you're going to, I smoke, and I think part of the reason why I smoke is because it's a way of it's a socially acceptable way of hurting myself. Or putting myself in situations that aren't necessarily good for me.
So with depression, were you ever been to a phase where you just couldn't function?
Oh yeah, all the time. I had that very often. I had a bad bout at sort of 14 where I didn't go to school for 6 weeks. Again, when I was 16 or maybe 17, there would just be times I just didn't really do anything. And what's weird is I don't really remember those times because when you're in that phase where you feel a bit numb and dead inside, I think your brain is not functioning at full capacity.
Yeah.
So I find it very difficult to remember those times because I think I was just at home watching TV a lot and probably playing Microsoft Solitaire, The Sims or whatever, and just not really engaging with life. I have less like deep sinking into depression now, I'd say, as I get older.
I really recognize what you said about you don't remember lots of the time. I think for me it's the same. Like the most dark time, I think it's a way our body and our mental to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
They just erase lots of memory.
For sure.
Yeah, so we don't get hurt again by it.
Yeah. And when you were really depressed, that was like more recently?
For me, it's different. I think for me, it's similar to you. I was depressed at a very young age.
Yeah.
But I grew up in China, so so in China we don't say, oh, this kid has some issues. They just say this is a bad kid. And, and she's lazy and she's weird, and I didn't know I had issues. I just thought I wasn't good. I wasn't meeting the expectations. I was just being bad.
Okay, so it wasn't so much that people were like, oh, there's something medically wrong with you. It was like, you're just not.
No, like I was just never feel normal. Like in school, people didn't like me, and I never feel happy. I to be honest, until I had a very severe episode 3 years ago, then I actively look for help. After I got out, it was the first time in my life to feel, oh, that's how it feels like you are happy and life is great. I realized the whole time before I never experienced this.
Yeah. And that's when you started comedy.
Yeah. I think it's lots of things are correlated. I was really, really depressed. And at the point, I feel if I don't look for help, I'll die. Yeah. And also with medication is the same. I didn't know much about medication. Then I searched something online, and people around me, they are all very speaking negatively about medication. Yeah. And then at some point, I realized I have nothing to lose.
No, right, exactly.
Like, I was like,
if you feel like you're gonna die, then like definitely.
Yeah, at that time I realized, everyone says it's bad, but I'm at the point, I think if I don't look for help, I don't take the medication, I might die. Yeah. So what I have to lose? Then I tried it. For me, it worked really greatly. I was on Winla vaccine for 18 months. Yeah. I think the first 6 weeks is really dangerous because when you are depressed, there are two parts of you are missing. One is the ability, feeling happy, and the other part is motivation, energy to do things. But with the medication, you sometimes the motivation comes back before the happiness. The happiness, then.
So you're motivated, but to do sad things.
Yeah, because when you are really, really depressed, you just don't have the energy to commit suicide. Right. But with the medication, the first 6 weeks could be your energy comes back, but you feel horrible. Then you have the ability and the energy to commit. Yeah. So that's really dangerous. Yeah. But with me, I actually I didn't have this because my ability of feeling happiness came back rather fast. Yeah. And also I have eating disorders. So when I was on this medication, the first 4-6 weeks, I couldn't eat at all. Then I lost so much weight and I look great. I look fabulous.
No, don't say that.
And I was really, really happy. I was in a manic phase for maybe 2-3 months. And that's when I met my boyfriend.
Oh, that's your boyfriend?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, by the way, these are my little lovers. They are my dogs. This one is called Shifu. He is adopted from Macedonia. So he's just like me, a third world creature. And we have this one. This one is Panda. Panda is a pure breed. So he has a very privileged life. He doesn't know what is suffering. Yeah, he's just like my boyfriend. And he has a German passport.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
So,
yeah.
so what else? So when you were 10 years old, how did you understand what depression is? How did you comprehend?
I didn't think I did. I think I was just really unhappy and I didn't want to go to school. And I don't really, again, it's another thing where I don't really remember it very well because obviously I was 10. But I really refused to go to school. And I think that would just be like when I would have thought like the beginning of it kind of started of like, but I just think I was unhappy. But I was unhappy because I was born in London and I lived there for the first 6 years of my life. And my mother, who's white, like a mixed race, we moved to the countryside. And then I was just in a school where like, really I was the odd one out. No one looked like me. And it's hard to say. But I think like when I say like, oh, I got bullied, like I definitely did get bullied. But like also that's kind of the nature of like children, I think, especially often girls, is like you kind of bully each other. Like children do say really nasty things to each other. But like the problem was mine took not an intentionally, but still a racist like undertone because it was an option to like insult me in a way that was like problematic. And then I just, I wouldn't have known at the time, like all the arguments I have about like race and racism and, you know, these all came later in my life. But yeah, at the time, that's what it was. It was a really bad environment for me and it wasn't safe and my body was reacting to it on that level.
And now it's you are a grown up now.
Yeah.
In between, did you look for other type of help?
So it's funny because when I was in 10, when I was in primary school, they kind of labeled me also as like the bad kid. So then I had like weird group therapy. While everyone else did sex education, there were like groups of like the troubled children that would have to go and like be in a room and chuck a ball of rainbow wool around. And it's just interesting how they like make you the problem rather than like other people around you that are treating you this way. And then I had some more therapy, I think at 14. And like on and off 16, 17. I really didn't find... What would happen is often something would happen and then I would make the mistake of like adding pressures onto myself. So something would be going wrong at like work and then I would make the mistake of like then like signing up to do more things. And then I'd have a breakdown, then I'd have to go home. But I'm a little bit better these days at coping with it, but I don't know if that's like always true.
Are you still going to therapy?
Yeah, so now I have I got a therapist in the first lockdown, first wave. Like I had a therapist actually in Berlin because you can get one with your health insurance. So I was really like, I'm going to get a therapist. And she was nice. She was an old white German lady called Britta. I called her Britta Water Filter, which made me laugh. And she was like perfectly like fine. There was like she was very German. So if I asked her how she was, she'd be like, well, that's a weird question for you to ask me. I was like, I'm just being polite. That's my culture. And then when I went back to the UK in the first lockdown, because I was like, for whatever reason, not coping here, I couldn't keep Britta because first of all, I like cancelled my health insurance because I wasn't in the country. And like, she also couldn't work out how Skype worked. So we like tried it once and I was like, I'm not paying to call Germany every week. And then I thought I was like, fine. I was at home with my mum. And then I watched, 6 episodes in a row of I Made a Story You, which is this BBC show with Michaela Cole wrote and directed and starred. And it's a lot about like sexual assault and consent. And it triggered me quite a lot. And there were some other circumstances around why it was a stressful moment for me to watch those episodes. And then I was like, okay, I'm not good. I need a therapist. And then I looked up, it was funny, I was reading a Galdem. Galdem is an online magazine for women of colour and non-binary people in the UK. And I was reading an article about I may destroy you. And then they had a link to Black and Asian therapists in the UK. And there's a whole like database on this website. So you can just put in your postcode where you live and up pops the therapists of color in your area. And that's how I got my therapist. She was the one that came up, and she's mixed race and she's also Black. And I think she just, from the first moment, it was really good because I started talking to her and she was like, oh, because she lives in the area I grew up in. And she was like, oh, I can imagine as a Black woman here now what it must have been like for you to grow up here. And I think she's sort like she can just see me in a way. So I have weekly therapy with her now since July, on Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool. But I love her a lot, actually. She's great.
So do you think having a same race therapy has impact?
Yeah, for me it does, because I think when... It's funny, actually, I was last night... I don't know why I'm talking about this, but like last night I was with a group of 4 white Germans, which was kind of by accident. I went to see one friend and then they brought some more friends over. And there is just a power dynamic. There is, you can't argue, I think, otherwise in our societies in the West, that there is a power dynamic, and it's rooted in like white privilege and white supremacy. And there are things I like don't know how much I can tell, say, my therapist, my white therapist before, because I don't want to stress her out. I don't want her to feel uncomfortable, which is also like another thing, because I'm always like, that's a kind of problem with myself. I'm always incredibly worried about other people's needs around me. But I also like don't want to say something to her and then for her to not give it, do you know, like not see how important or how much it's upsetting me. Because then that feels like the worst thing, I think, one of the worst things I think when, as a racialized person, when you do experience racism, is often not to me the incident. So like I can be like in Berlin, someone shouts something at me in the street, like go back home or whatever. And I'm like, that really sucks. But what often is worse is when you tell someone else, a friend or whatever, and they don't take it seriously or they try and deny it, which like even my own mother has a habit of doing, of being like, oh, that's probably not it. And they're trying to make it better, but it feels like being gaslit. Like it feels like your feelings are being invalidated. So it's very nice to have a therapist where I can say, this happened and this is this. And she's like, yeah, this happens like to women of color, to Black women, like people perceive you in this way. So I think that is like something to be like quite aware of. And then it was funny because last night I sort of was making this joke that there were too many Germans to other people ratio for like a good time. I feel like if there's too many Germans, it's not going to be a good time. And I was like, I kind of need to leave this situation. I don't really want to be here anymore. And so I texted some friends, and I had one friend who came to pick me up, and they were like, I'm not coming in. Inside, I don't want to deal with this with white people today, sort of thing. And I said that to my friend there. I was like, oh, and they were like, they don't want to come in even for a minute. And I was like, no, I don't think they feel like in the mood to hang out with white people. And then they were like, really like, he was like, is that a thing? And I was like, yeah, for sure it's a thing, because there's a power dynamic and you're not aware of it because you're the one with the privilege. But there is a power dynamic. If you date, like I often do, just because of the demographics, I'm around a lot of white men. And I was listening to actually another podcast, Why Won't You Date Me? And Nicole Byer, who does it, had this guest on who said this thing, which I recently listened to the episode because it's the thing that I thought was really important. That was, if you date a white person as a person of color, it is their job to protect you more than you need to protect them. Because if they're bringing you into white spaces, they're fundamentally bringing you into places that can be harmful for you. And it is their job to go out of their way to protect you. And I think that is a lesson like a lot of people could learn. But
I think what you said is really, really interesting. I start to read more about the racial dynamic in the Western countries because growing up in China, I was racist. I was very racist because that's how I was educated. My country, they told us many bad things about other race, other country people to make us believe we are the most superior race, and it was all the white people's fault to bully us 200 years ago.
I mean, the Opium Wars were pretty rough.
Yeah. So like I grew up not understanding like everyone should be equal and no race is better than others. So when I think about 3 years ago when I started to do comedy, I said so many racist stuff, but it's not because I'm a bad person. It's just because I didn't know. And during Pink Floyd incident, I read a sentence.
George Floyd.
George Floyd. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Like Pink Floyd is a band from like
his wife. So during George Floyd incident, I read a sentence from somewhere. They say, being ignorant is a choice. Being informed is also a choice. So I started to educate myself to read books about the racial dynamic. As soon as I started to read it, it was like I was enlightened. It was I can recognize so many things in the book because I realized lots of things about racial. It also holds true in other situations. If most of the sentence paragraph, if I replace race with gender or with class, they all hold true. Yeah. And in my situation, I grew up in China in a lower class, very underprivileged family. My mom, she is a single woman who's handicapped, and we were from lower class family. So that means we don't have money, and we are not educated. And growing up in a family like this, I was discriminated so much. But I didn't know I was discriminated. I just thought because I was weird, because I was not good enough. Yeah. And in China, we claim there's no class, and we are a communist country and we are superior, so we destroy the classes and everyone is equal. But which is a lie. Like it objectively exists, and I was the lower class, and all the feelings you said about being invalidated and being discriminated, and then you tell people who you care, and they tell you your feeling is not true and it's wrong. It really, really hurts. But I never knew how to describe it until I read those books. Yeah. I realized all those racial theories I can apply to my own upbringing, like being always being an outsider, and they, like those rich people, like people who have better family and better life, they take it for granted that their experience of the society is the universal experience. When you have different experience, they tell you made it up, or they tell you are being too sensitive, or they tell you it's your fault. And this is, it's interesting when you describe your upbringing. I can recognize a lot of the feeling, being isolated, being the only one different, and being no one can understand you. So the book I read is called White Fragility. It's really a great book. And now I understand the theory. I can better defend myself. For example, I experienced some like microaggression, let's say it that way. I fear me being Chinese, I don't have the kind of really negative racial discrimination. For maybe once in a while, I'm on Wubang, a crazy guy spit on me. But
that's pretty bad.
But that's because he's crazy. So like I don't take that personal. And in workplace, I always can find jobs easily, and I kind of feel like being Asian is for my advantage because they need the diversity. Then later I realized in a white dominated group, I realized they can give me the kind of opportunity to just have a basic position or whatever, but when it's going to higher position, they always want white people. And I realize in a group of white people, the one word you can never say is white people. They got furious. They are furious. They are mad. They're like, race doesn't matter. We don't see colors. Why are you mentioning race?
I think especially in Germany as well. Germans do not like being told that they're white people. But then it's funny because they're also incredibly obsessed with race and ethnicity and the idea of Germanness as being like rooted in the blood. So it's weird for a country that's very obsessed with it. It's weird that they like flat out refuse to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I have a German friend that told me I'm the most racist person he ever knew because he never heard people say the word white people other than me. He say I'm racist against white people.
It's not a thing.
Not a thing. Because like when they mention their friends, they always say, I have a black friend, I have an Asian friend, I have a Chinese friend. But when it comes to German, you cannot say, oh, that German is white.
Yeah.
Because white is the default.
Right.
And mentioning the default made them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a whole time. We chose a certain place to live.
So how did you start comedy?
So I started 2 years ago. I was on the other side of the world in Nepal. I'd gone there to meet a German man. I actually probably should be a bit careful about how many details I chuck out about this person. But it was basically a bad breakup. He wasn't that nice. He turned out to be a massive asshole. And it was weird. I was really like alone in a foreign country and one I didn't really want to be in because I had not gone to, no offense to Nepal, but I'd not had a particular desire to visit it as a place. I don't like hiking. I like beaches. It's landlocked. Nepali people are really nice. The food is great. And I did have some really nice times there. But I was sort of kind of like a bit stuck and then whatever. And at some point I had thought about doing comedy, but not in any kind of serious sense. And it was when I got back to Berlin, I was like, okay, I'm going to try it because it was like I was really like in a bad way and I had lost all my confidence. And I don't know what it was, but it was just something about being there made me think I wanted to give comedy a try. And then I did. And I just played it one at a time. I didn't ever think in terms of like a long-term goal or anything like that, which I do now and I wish I kind of didn't do. But I just did like an open mic. It went good. I did another one. It went good. I did a third one. Went bad. But do you know what I mean? Like it, and then it just like started, and then the Berlin new stand-up competition came in, where you have the
my trophy.
Your trophy.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah.
I was third, but no one knows that because there was no third place. And then the competition came, and then I was just sort of, the first heat was my like 18th, I think, spot.
Wow.
And then from then on, I just was like practicing to do the competition. And then, it was just really weird. It was a bit on and off for a bit. Like, am I doing this? And then I was doing it.
How this idea came into your mind that you want to do comedy?
I don't know. Like, it's one of those things. I feel like, I don't know. I've always at some point growing up been like, oh, maybe I'll try this job or maybe I'll do this job. But the thing I always wanted to do was politics. That was like the thing I was like very sure I wanted to get into. And then I really got to a point where I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be the sort of person that wants to get up to go to work at 9 a.m. in an office with people who I fundamentally like hate because of their beliefs and I don't know. I wouldn't want to go to work and see Boris Johnson every day. That's not something I want for me. I don't want that for any nice person. But so at some point I was like, okay, I don't know. Like, I think really early on I'd found out there was a comedy school in Berlin. Like maybe the first year I lived here. And then I really wanted my friend, Tony, to do it, because Tony to me is one of the funniest people I know. And so I was like, we should do comedy stand-up to school together. And then I left because I was doing my master's and I was around the world, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time I came back, I didn't actually have any money because I kind of made myself broke by going to Nepal. So I didn't have any money for comedy classes. And I was like, okay, well, just try it before doing the comedy classes. And if you like it, you can do the classes. And then at some point, it just got to the point where I'd done it so much that it seemed, I think by the time the competition was finished, I said to Caroline, like, oh, I want to do some classes. And she was like, don't do. She was like, you don't really need them.
Yeah, Caroline is the founder of Berlin Stand-Up School. It's a very good comedy school. If you think about studying comedy but don't have the courage, I really recommend to just do a course there. They teach you how to write jokes and to prepare your first 5 minutes, and then there's a end of class show with friends and family, and they are all very encouraging. After lockdown, they'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is comedy always part of in your life?
I think it is if you're British. We are such a country of comedy. Like the shows I watched growing up were like, Have I Got News for You? I've been watching that since I was like 10, which is like a panel show. It's like politics and comedians and it's just what we watch, and all, like a lot of comedians in the UK are really household names. I didn't realize that other countries were different and would have different senses of humor, or as in the case of Germany, not have one. But but yeah, it really, you grow up and you do know like a lot of comedians' names, and I always like, it's not something I like. I didn't love stand-up. I didn't go to Edinburgh Festival. I didn't watch like stand-up specials on Netflix particularly, but I always was like aware of comedians because they're a really big part of our TV and radio culture in the UK. So in that sense, yes. And I don't know, like it's really random. I had like one friend who was very like, oh, you're funny, you should do comedy. But I wasn't funny before. I got funny. It's like a lot of people who are comedians are like, oh, I was funny in school. I was the class clown, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't. I was not that person. I have a lot of friends that I think are actually in a lot of ways funnier than me. None of them would do comedy though. That's like the difference. Yeah,
I think with me it's the same. When I wanted to do comedy, people around me, they ask me, are you even funny? And even to this day, I feel very insecure when I meet people in real life, telling them I'm a comedian, because there's this stereotypical idea that comedian, they are charming, they can crack a joke all the time. But in real life, I just look weird.
And you don't look weird.
I feel I'm very weird. Like I'm never like super charming, can make jokes all the time.
Yeah.
But on stage, I'm funny.
Yeah, you're very funny.
Oh, thank you. But there are lots of people, they are the other way around. They are charming in real life. On stage, they can be awkward.
It's true. And like it's an interesting one because even not every funny person can necessarily do comedy. And I'm trying to think now. I can turn it on in a group and then try and make people laugh. But it really became a defense mechanism for me when I did this master's program, because I was traveling the world, because it was a global studies master's program. I did a semester in Berlin, a semester in Argentina, one in India. And I traveled with a lot of, well, all white people pretty much, for the most part, and mostly Westerners. And I had this realization that they just move around the world very differently to how I move around the world. And it's funny because a lot of these people ended up becoming my friends later on, but I was always a bit wary of them for like certain reasons. And I think I developed being funny as a bit of a defense towards being in an academic situation. I like academia in the sense I really like to go deep in theory and like knowledge, But I really find the environment of academia really stressful. Like, I don't like authority. I don't like being told what to do and like be on a class and blah, blah, blah. I find the dynamics of these groups sometimes difficult, which I think a lot of people are surprised about. But I really think I developed comedy then as a defense around what were a lot of people that I struggled immediately when I first met them, struggled to kind of understand how I would be friends with them, which is weird because I did end up with a lot of friends in the end. But then that's a whole other thing of like moving through an experience together.
Do you feel like a comedy with your depression, or do you think it helps a little bit?
Yeah, so much. I did not know how much until lockdown hit. Then the pandemic came and I was like, oh no, who knew I was relying on that so much? So like the first pandemic, like the first lockdown even, I was glad it hit because I was doing 6 shows a week and I was burning myself out. I was like exhausted and I was running between different things and I already knew I needed some time off. So when they were like, okay, everyone needs to get in the house and stay in the house, I was actually like, okay, cool, breathe. But then you miss it because you do get like an adrenaline rush. And it's not like every time I'm in the mood to do comedy. Like often there are days where I'm like really feeling really depressed and then you like drag yourself out of bed. And like in the case of me, I just put clothes over the top of my pajamas and and then you go and then you're there and you're like, 7 minutes, you have to suddenly make all this room full of people laugh when you feel dreadful about yourself inside. And you do it, but then the adrenaline hits and you can do it. And then you have this weird, I was having this like weird thing where I had this like rush of energy, but was still feeling really weird about myself. So after shows, I would be really like, it was midnight and I'd be walking around Berlin looking for a bar and then like sitting in a bar for 2 hours because I just needed like to bring myself down from that rush. So it's definitely not like a cure for my depression. It definitely like messes with me in a lot of ways, but it gets me out of the house and it stops me being bored. And I think it's been helping me I'm very like, I really don't like letting people down. So if you book me, like, unless I probably wouldn't do this now because of like how we're looking at sickness, but unless I'm like really, really dying sick, I will come. Like before I used to go to shows, I wouldn't do this now because now I think of like the germs spreading in the mic. Yeah. But I like drag myself out of bed really sick and like drink lemon and ginger tea and then be like, God, like do comedy for 5 minutes and then like go back.
I really can relate with it. I think comedy helped me not only like the confidence, like the talent and self-recognition, but just the physical fact that I need to get out of the house really helps. Because I grew up in China. My family was poor, so I had no hobbies, no life. So for me, like I just don't know what to do. I never had hobbies, and then I have comedy. I realized every week, like 3-4 nights per week, I have to get out of the house and to go through the whole city to talk with people, then come back. Yeah. That is healthy. Yeah. Because before I met my boyfriend, before I had comedy, every night I was home just swiping Tinder. Yeah. And more activities. Like your life is empty. You rely on this stupid app or meeting like really weird people. Some of them can sense your weakness and take advantage of it. And you just being in a vicious circle. And I feel going to comedy itself is like almost like a meditation for myself because you just go there without any agenda. Like traveling like 2 hours per day and looking for what your mind is occupied. When I go to comedy and I come back, I will not play my phone. I will not swiping Tinder because I was too occupied. Before the show, I prepared the show in my mind. Right. Then I come back, I was like, oh, what can I do better? Then I write in my mind. Yeah. So it's just keep yourself busy. So my mind is so busy, it don't have time to think about the other fucked up stuff.
Yeah, it's because getting on stage, it's like terrifying. So like your mind is so occupied with this fear that you have to deal with. Yeah. You can't think about the rest of like the other stuff that's going on in your life. And I think you're right, you get out of the house, you have to, they're really social. We all know each other. We like interact. It's like seeing like your friends or your workmates because we're all together. And it's really, I think in that sense, it's really good at like it's good for me in terms of I drink less when I'm doing comedy because I can't do comedy very well on a hangover and I can't do it well if I'm drunk because I'm just not very quick. So I tend not to drink so much when I'm doing comedy. I think it's, I miss it a lot now. I've been like this lockdown, which is, what are we on? Like week 5, 6, week 6, week 7? I don't even know. But this lockdown has been like rough. My mental health has been like collapsing in on itself because.
Do you have a coping mechanism when you feel depressed? What do you do?
That's the thing. I don't know how good I'm okay. I feel like I'm always like, I'm all right now. And I think it's like lockdown blues is like definitely a thing. I don't think it's weird that I feel like quite shit at the moment because I think a lot of it is just boredom. It's good for me to like get up and do yoga when I wake up in the mornings, which is usually not even the morning. I'm trying to be better about being nice to myself. I'm trying to drink less. That doesn't always happen. I'm coping okay. I mean, it's just really, at the moment, it's really like up days and down days. But it's kind of okay. I'm just really bored. And I think it's a mixture of being very bored and then very unmotivated. So there are a million other projects I could be doing and I'm not doing them. I mean, now I might do one, but like I haven't been doing them because I just haven't had the motivation. And then each day is starting to blend into each other because I don't have any sense of like what was different this day to that day.
Yeah. So I have a question. For me, I think comedy helped me a lot. That it lots of things with depression. I think it's also related to self-doubting, low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence. And the comedy really helped me to be able to talk. For example, I told you growing up poor, being discriminated. I was always the person in a group that I had to pretend. What happened with this thing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Is something happening?
It become blurry. Hey.
Hi.
So I like from a very young age, I always knew that I need to hide because if I don't hide, people will think I'm weird. And for example, being poor, my mom is handicapped, and I don't have a father, all these kind of things. So I had this habit since a very young age that just don't talk about myself and pretend I'm the same as others. But this is a habit so deep into me. Then at one point I realized I pretend so much, and people really just ignore my feelings, ignoring my perspectives. And something happened early this year. Actually, I will tell this story. Okay, I was telling this story about this Chinese friend. Then in the middle of the story, I realized I cannot tell it because if I tell the whole story, I get into political trouble. And I'm still a Chinese person with a Chinese passport. So I cut it. So the moral of the story is that I realized I hide so much. My friends, people around me, they just get used to that, taking it for granted that I will acknowledging their reality. I will not tell my story. So they feel so comfortable in their bubble. And once I speak up, selling this other side of story, they accuse me of playing the victim. They accuse me of lying. And then I realized it's a person I love so much and so close to me. And but I realized the friendship is based on the foundation that I cannot be myself. And the reason why, there's two parts of the story. What part for me, I was hiding. I didn't want my friends to know that how poor my family is. On the other hand, they were also being ignorant because they never trying to really get to know me. Instead, they just take it for granted that I'm the same. And this kind of thing happened. It really, really hurt me and made me realize I cannot be silent anymore. I cannot do this anymore. I don't want to hide ever again in my life again. I don't want to feel shame again. So I just want to talk about my experience. This helped me a lot. For example, the story that how poor my family is. And for example, when I was in primary school, I was beaten almost to death. And until this day, every time when I think about this memory, it's killing me. But the comedy helped me to be able to talk it. So I want to ask, do you have a story that is very, very sad? You were not able to process it, but comedy helped you to face it?
Yeah, I have like stories in my comedy which are just like times which I think that's quite like a common saying, like comedy is just trauma plus time.
Yes.
So originally I was making jokes about this situation in Nepal with this guy because that was my way of like processing. It was also my way of just like bitching about him in a very public way. But yeah, and then things that boyfriends have said to me that aren't very nice, I make jokes about it. A lot of it is, I mean, we did some for the It's Mental comedy show, then I wrote some material like directly about being suicidal and this kind of thing. And it's weird because I actually think I might find, I don't know if I ever had trouble processing that was something that I sometimes felt like. But when it comes to like relationships, I quite like making jokes. A lot of my comedies are stuff I wish I said to people at the time and didn't say, to men especially. Just the fact that some guy, this was the first lockdown when I was dating this guy, would give me careers advice in the middle of me having like a mental health breakdown where I'd been like by myself for 3 days, like going crazy. And like just didn't care enough to like investigate that or like check on me or see if I was okay. I think it's wild the lack of empathy you get from other people.
I like what you said, like comedy help you to say things to someone you wish you said. For me, I really can relate to that. For example, right now I'm working on a story. I don't know how to make it funny yet. When I went to Netherlands to study, I was 21 years old because I give up my study in China. So when I started my second study in Netherlands, I was 21 years old. But in Holland, there's a government incentive to make people to finish their study very, very early. Yeah. So most of people in Holland, they will finish their master study when they are 22. And when I started my bachelor there, most of my classmates are 17 or 18. And they called me old lady. They were making fun of I'm old. They talk as if I'm weird, like I'm really strange. And they gossip about how old I am. They say I'm 25 or something, or even there's some people say I'm 30. So the story just gets bigger and bigger. The rumor, they just call me old lady. And I feel so ashamed about my age because I was like, oh, I'm so old and I'm starting this alone again. And now thinking back, last year I turned 30. I realized this is ridiculous. I was 21 years old, but I was feeling so ashamed. I'm old. And now I'm 30, realize, oh, I was so young. That's the best time of my life. I was feeling ashamed being old. And I start to trying to talk about it and trying to make jokes about it, because now I know it's not right. It's not right to call me old, and it's not right to make me feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And it's not right to talk behind people's back just because they are different, and age means nothing.
No, age really does. I went to university at 21. Because I dropped out of school when I was 16. And I remember making jokes about it with the, this isn't a very good joke. This is a good 10 years before I was a comedian. It was just like I said, with the like boys that were like, because I went to a fancy university, and a lot of the boys there left their boarding school to go to this university and never had a job or anything. But I remember saying to some of them I'd met in town, I was like, oh yeah. I said something about being like, I'm like melted cheddar, which is like hot and mature, like mature cheddar cheese. Yeah. And then that's what they called me. So some boys in my class nicknamed me Hot Mature Kate for 3 years. And I think that's another thing that you can use it as a defense mechanism. I don't know if I was embarrassed about. I think there's definitely a feeling, of course, like if everyone else is 18 and you're 21, and those differences feel really big when you're that age, even though 21-year-olds are really, really young. And like if I talk to a 40-year-old, I don't feel that much different to them as a 31-year-old. Yeah. But for that moment in time, I think, of course you feel a bit like, oh, I was a bit slower than other people, blah, blah. Yeah. But I'm so glad I went to university later because there was so much more there and together, and also just knew myself a bit better. And I think that's like a better place to be. Yeah.
Finish what I was saying. I think like sometimes I use comedy as a way just to defend me in the past. Like, because when I was 21, I didn't know better. I had a low self-esteem. I didn't understand the culture. I beat myself down. But now I kind of use comedy to protect the younger version of me, to defend her that she did nothing wrong. It's everyone around her was mean to her. Yeah. And I think for me, it's kind of making peace with my past.
Yeah, I think that's nice.
Yeah. So the next question, do you have days sometimes when you wake up, you just know it's a shit day?
Yeah, all the time in lockdown. All the time. That happened yesterday. I woke up, I cried, what did I do? I made tea, smoked a cigarette. And then I was sort of mooching around. Then I decided to leave the house. I came back, then I washed my hair, then I cried. And then at some point I went to go and see my friend, which was fun. And I really wanted to see him and hang out with him. But I kind of just wanted to hang out with him. And then he bought 3 other Germans there. And it's just too many Germans. And so I left. And then I ended up staying up quite late, which was a bit unnecessary. But I had a really, really funny random time. And I love funny random nights.
So when you have a bad day, you wake up with a bad day. Do you have some routine to make you do something?
I think it's hard because if I'm waking up on a bad day, I don't want to get up and do yoga. And I think only you can know that. I think a good thing to do is like check in with your body, which is like, breathe into your chest, breathe into your heart, like just kind of see what you need. And I was like, and now I try not to, like, I used to do this thing of like, I'd start worrying about other things that I needed to do, or like, I'd think of all the things that was a problem, and then you spiral. You really go into like a spiral. So now I'm like, okay, you don't want to do yoga today. Like, what do you want? And I was like, okay, I want a cigarette. I was like, before you have a cigarette, like make a cup of tea. And then I was like, cup of tea, and then like cigarette. And this is a thing. And then I was like, make some breakfast. Like, just try and do everything one step at a time, and really like, okay, I'm going to have breakfast now. And then at some point I was like, okay, it's, it's still light outside. It's good to go outside. So like go across town to buy some like hair stuff or whatever. So I did. I went to like a shop to go and get a hair oil, some like conditioner and stuff. And then I was like, okay. And then I come home. And then I was washing my hair, and that takes a long time. And then I was crying because I get stressed sometimes when I'm doing my hair. That's a whole other story. But then it was like, okay, you need to eat again. And it's just like, one thing at a time, and then try and like, try and call people if you can. But I think it's really, my big thing is a cup of tea. And I think that's just because I'm really British. And so that's what my mother would do, being like, are you okay? Okay, let's get you a cup of tea. And it is like, if you can just stop thinking about how shit you feel for like 10 minutes it takes to like boil the kettle, make a cup of tea and drink this like cup of tea. By the time you've drunk it, it'll be half an hour later. Maybe you're in a slightly better place.
My routine is, for example, today I woke up, I feeling horrible. I feel really, really shit. My my tip is I really like taking baths. I would just run a bath and sitting inside, because during bath you don't think about anything. And I just sit inside and feeling warm, and half an hour later I feel a little bit better. Then and another thing is that if I have a bad day, I will make sure I treat myself with a great breakfast.
Yeah.
Then I know that I'm having something nice.
Yeah. I think that's good. I have a friend, Abby Palmer, she's called, who is an artist who did a really good, like, it was on Instagram, like an Instagram talk about mental health and like having a mental health plan. And you can go see it on Femzine London's Instagram highlights, but it really breaks it down into like a traffic light system. So it's like red, like what is a bad, like really bad day, what does this look like? And then like what are some things you can like do to cope? So if you like can't cook food, okay, buy instant noodles or buy a takeaway. And then it's like yellow is like the kind of you know, things are on the edge, and then green, when green is good, you can do all your things. And I think that's quite good to organize it prior to it happening. Yeah, I think that's really a good idea. Just lower the expectation. If you cannot cook food, if you just sitting home feeling horrible that you cannot cook the food, you blame yourself more. But lower the expectation. Say, I'm having a bad day. It's fine. I cannot cook the food. Let me just order food. Then once the expectation is lowered, you blame yourself less, and then you are less in the vicious circle. I think with my depression and with my eating disorder, it's the same. The biggest thing is that I need to take proactive action to not blame myself. For example, with food, it's the same. If I ate too much and if I blame myself, then I start to binge eating. And I eat until a point that I have to puke and I cry and my face is in my toilet and I feel horrible. I cannot stop. But if I just eat a lot, then at the end I tell myself, it's just a day and it's okay. Normal people have eating a lot for pleasure from time to time too. It's just a normal day. And if I tell myself it's normal people also do this, then I don't feel the shame and blame. Then I don't go into this vicious circle. Just accept you are not perfect. Accept whatever happened is okay, and it's not your fault. That's the first step to get out of the situation. I think it's hard. I think we're so used to like beating ourselves up about not doing things and not achieving things and talking very negatively to ourselves. But I really think just learning to be a bit nicer to yourself. But it is, I'm not saying it's like easy or anything. It's not like straight away, but just being like, okay, this is, yesterday was one of those days I was like, this isn't a day I'm going to get the stuff done I wanted to get done.
So my next question, do you have not Netflix, do you have a comedy special which you really like and related to mental health topic?
A comedy special related to mental health? I don't know.
Then if not related to mental health, can you just recommend any comedy special you really, really like?
I really like Catherine Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Which special?
She's got 2, In Trouble and Glitter. I think they're both good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Though I would say, actually, if you can find it, because it's not Netflix, it's on the BBC. It was on the BBC, which is Sarah Pascoe.
Mm-hmm.
She's a British comedian. She's got a good one where there's just a very good bit about why women don't want to look down when their partners are going down on them.
Could if you want to share this special comedy special to our audience, you have 30 seconds. How are you going to share it?
Why do I sell it? Why am I selling it? I don't get any money. It's good. Like all of those are just 2. I really like Sarah Pascoe. I really like Catherine Ryan. They're both of Catherine Ryan's comedy specials are really good. I think she was the first British woman, or maybe the second British person to have a Netflix special with In Trouble. It's good. I would argue that there might be points where it could be considered problematic, but that is like some of the best comedy does tread a line. So I don't know. People always describe me as like a woke comedian, and what's odd is I'm incredibly not, and I say some like incredibly unwoke things. It's just that they're targeted at people that these things are usually not targeted at, and just the way I present like in the world to people, like it's read differently. But just good women comedians. I'm a big fan of women comedians. I love Ali Wong.
Oh, me too. She's my idol.
Good.
Like she is the first woman comedian that really like top of the game. Top. And also she's a minority, but she's so outspoken. She smashed all the stereotypes, and for those stereotypes actually applies to her. She explained her side of the story and makes sense of it and how she enjoys it. Oh, she's really amazing. I love Ali Wong. Check out Ali Wong.
Yeah, she's real good.
Yeah. So my last question before we end this saying. So my last question is, I haven't built an audience yet, so I don't know who are you when you watch it. But I can imagine there are probably some people who have mental illness or had mental illness will be interested in this topic.
Yeah.
So do you have something to say to audience who are suffering right now?
Don't it's gonna get better. And I know like a lot of people say that, but like honestly, if I had been successful in my suicide attempts as a teenager, I wouldn't have had this whole life. And I think sometimes the most interesting people that walk this planet are the ones that are the most fucked up. And if you haven't got mental illnesses right now in the pandemic, then what the hell's wrong with you? How can you not have mental illnesses? The world is crazy right now. I just think it's more normal to think that the world is fucked up and feel that than it is to think, oh yeah, this is fine. Life is great, because it's not. A tip I used when I would feel really suicidal was I would say to myself, okay, I want to kill myself. What I made a plan to do was I was going to kill myself at 30. And I've reached 31. So I always said, look, I'm going to kill myself. And so that's always been a kind of way of coping, which was like, I'm going to kill myself later, and then just move the date. So I was like, okay, you just have to get to 30. And if you get to 30, it's fine. You're allowed to check out. You did 30 years. And you know what? If you did 30 years and you're like, this is life, it's not for me, then fine. But like put an end goal, a good kind of like 10, 15 years away in the future, and be like, I'll kill myself then if I still feel like shit. And it's worked out all right so far. And I have less thoughts about it. So I don't know, try that, see if that works for you.
We are doing a show together.
Yes, Hairy Bitches.
Yeah. What's it about?
Smashing Shame.
Smashing Shame. And who are doing it?
Me, you, Anna.
Yeah, so it's Kate, me, and Anna Barros, who is an amazing female comedian too. So it's a weekly show, every Monday at a mass comedy club when there's no corona.
Right. So you can come to it, but not now.
Yeah, not now. After the lockdown, please come to visit us, talking about our shame, your shame.
Smash your shame.
Let's smash it and living a happy life.
Yay.
Yeah, cool. That's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the show, please make sure to subscribe. I don't even know if it's here, but subscribe.
Yeah, the button's like down below.
Yeah, and if you had mental illness, you were suicidal before, you want to tell your story, please leave a comment below and or write an email to us. I will reply to you. And maybe if you...
that's nice of you.
And if you feel comfortable, I can invite you for an episode 2 to tell your story. Yeah. It's mental podcast. Let's stay alive. Don't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself.
This is the most hilarious podcast sign out ever. I love it.
Let's do it again. Don't kill yourself. Don't. Maybe in 15 years. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.